So if you watched our video on the Splat Pack, you might remember that I said I was working on a Spongebob video. And to be honest, I used that as a hook for people to stay and see what new Spongebob venture we were taking, because that always works, right? Well, here we are, and to be honest, this was the video I was working on first. It just turns out there was a lot more to cover than I initially thought. Like, I had no idea that the Splat Pack was a thing, and I sure as hell didn't realize there was more than one point-and-click Spongebob game, let alone the fact that there's an order to them. So imagine my surprise when I turned on one of the Spongebob games and the EXE was titled SB2, and that's why I realized there were definitely more PC games. So how many are there? Well, there's about 8 Spongebob games, 7 if you don't include Tooncast Studio, which I don't because it's honestly something I could do in MS Paint, but I guess it does have more functions. For this video though, I'm just going to be taking a look at the first 5, mostly because I was going into this video expecting to do just one game, and 4 more games are just about what I'm willing to take. So going in order from oldest to newest, we have Operation Krabby Patty, Employee of the Month, Battle for Bikini Bottom, the movie game, and finally Lights Camera Pants. And I know you might be thinking, oh, I remember some of these games, they were pretty fun. But if you played the console versions, you probably have no idea how different the PC counterparts are from them. So why don't we get into it? Alright, I lied. Before I get into it, I just want to throw something in for the people who might not be aware of the Spongebob games. So the Spongebob games, particularly Battle for Bikini Bottom and the movie game on the consoles, are pretty widely regarded as great, solid games, with the movie game being seen as one of the better movie tie-in games in general. They were usually platforming collectathons that, while a little standard, were greatly enhanced by drawing from their license. That meant you had interesting levels tied together with dialogue and humor that is always seen in the show itself. Putting all that together left a memorable impression on pretty much anyone who played it. And I say all this to provide context for where my expectations were as I booted up these PC games, and well, let's actually get into it this time. First up, we have Operation Krabby Patty, the first Spongebob game on the PC, which I will be skipping. Evidently, as computers get smarter, better, and faster, it gets harder and harder to run games that came out before Windows Vista. Windows me? More like memeing on the losers trying to play old games. I tried for hours to get Operation Krabby Patty working using different softwares, but my last 2 remaining brain cells decided to instead clash together, sparking a fire in which I'm sure they can work themselves out of. From the footage I've seen, it seems to be the most like Battle for Bikini Bottom, and if that's the case, I'm kinda glad I can't play it, which I'll explain later. So we're starting with the second Spongebob game, Employee of the Month. Employee of the Month was the first Spongebob game I ever played, and I will always have fond memories of playing it over and over. What we have here is your standard point-and-click game where you go around fulfilling tasks for people in order to further your own goals. Because it's a point-and-click game, a lot of the focus goes into the story, so how about I start with that? So Mr. Krabs gets free tickets to Neptune's Paradise and decided to give them to SpongeBob as a reward for being Employee of the Month since, forever. Because we all know Mr. Krabs would never give up something that he would actually have to pay for. So SpongeBob and Patrick plan on taking a bus there, but they need bus tokens. So SpongeBob has to go digging for the Flying Dutchman's treasure by using Larry the Lobster's bucket and pail, which you get by distracting him with some delicious grandma cookies. You find the treasure, but it turns out it's just bus tokens, which is pretty convenient. You get on the bus, but a storm rises and the bus driver misses his exit, leading to the gang being stuck in rock bottom. Great episode, by the way. To get out, you need to clear the weather, which leads you to the news station because they have a weather machine that, of course, doesn't work. Because of that, you have to go to the source of the weather, which turns out to be Marlin, who is mad about the previously mentioned weather machine. SpongeBob destroys it, which clears the weather, and should be heading to Neptune's Paradise, but he is so annoying that the bus driver ditches him back in Bikini Bottom. And this starts the shortest yet most convoluted chapter. Now you have to go meet up with Sandy, but you have to get your helmet. Somehow, someway, a snake breaks into SpongeBob's house and occupies his helmet. To get rid of the snake, you go to a psychedelic shop which sells glasses that let you enter dreams. You go to Squidward's house and enter his dream as a Squidward-SpongeBob hybrid, where you get him to give you his dream clarinet, but it's actually a real clarinet and you use it to charm the snake. You go to Sandy and you all agree to go to Neptune's Paradise by ship, but you need oxygen tanks which are in her dome, and away you go. Unfortunately, Patrick is a mongrel and for no reason stands on the line, stopping the fuel from getting to the ship, meaning you guys crash on the way to Paradise. Luckily, you crash in Bottoms Up, the upper echelon society, which has an oxygen spring where you can go refuel the ship. To do this though, you need a club suit, which is done by getting a quarter to make a reservation for the fancy restaurant, and to do that, you have to settle a neighborly feud in Waverly Place, Hills, which just involves some golden coconuts and some actual coconuts. When you get to the restaurant, you get a complimentary suit and you get to keep it because you get thrown out before they can take the suit off of you. Finally, you fill the oxygen tanks and finally make it to paradise where SpongeBob and his friends have a rip-roaring good time. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I still enjoy this game. It's propped up by its solid writing, and there were even a few lines that genuinely got a laugh out of me. For example, SpongeBob's whole exchange with Plankton in the news station, which was gold. Even the side characters who aren't actual SpongeBob characters were unique and so full of personality that one of the characters showed up again and again in the sequels because he must have been well received. The puzzles weren't the most challenging, though there were some that I had to stop and think about. Of course, this probably wasn't helped by the fact that I actually remember a lot of these puzzles from when I was a kid. It's fine though, because there was a good flow to the game where you're not getting held up by any one section for too long. And I will say that the game rewards exploring in each chapter because you can find tapes that give you secret footage showing off behind the scenes concept arts all the way to the finished product, which is pretty cool to look at. If I had any kids, I would let them play this game because it holds up pretty well. Of course, that isn't to say that there aren't any negatives. The models look off in this game, and it's especially noticeable in the cutscenes. Everyone looks like they're in a 3D version of Salad Fingers or something. I don't know what it is, but it puts me off. In addition to that, my copy gave everyone a lack of pupils, which made everyone minus SpongeBob look kinda weird. Look, Squidward seems a little more shell-shocked than usual, and Larry looks like he's possessed by the ghost of Ziz. Also, people who are not established characters wildly vary in the way of vocal quality. One guy is just badly pretending to be a fancy girl. It's like it was a placeholder before they actually got someone, but they just forgot to take it out. The jewelry guy needs a pop filter, and the Barger Mark guy just makes me laugh because I know he only did it because he was probably the only guy in the office who could make his voice crack repeatedly. The only other thing is that I wish SpongeBob walked a little faster, but still, this is a really enjoyable game because even the bad stuff adds to my enjoyment. So yeah, I definitely recommend you play it, if only so that you can hear all the dialogue stuff I didn't talk about. Moving on from that, we have Battle for Bikini Bottom. If you might remember, the console version of this game is a collectathon platformer, but here it's more of a collection of mini-games. I'm not really sure what the story is other than Plankton sticks some robots on the town and they're causing havoc. There's even a setting called story mode, but I'm not really sure what it does. Maybe add a couple of cutscenes? So I think I'll skip all that and just take a look at the minigames. So there are 6 types of minigames in each of the 5 areas, so I'll break it down that way. The first minigame is the Introductory Minigame, the one that introduces you to the area more or less. There's no rhyme or reason to what type of minigame it will be, but it usually is the most annoying one. The most egregious example was the one in Mermalair where you had to jump to the top, but the jumping is trash. And if you lose your 3 lives, you start at the very bottom like a spongy Sisyphus. In addition, in each of these games you have to find 5 certain objects in order to progress, and if you don't get all of them by the time you finish the level, you have to start over. This happened to me in the Kelp Forest mission where you had to jump from vine to vine, and I ended up missing one right at the end like an idiot. Also, while I'm here, let me just say that the jumping was weird, and if I waited too long for a jump, I would lose a life because some robots got me. I just don't understand what it is with these old games and jumping. Anyway, the second set of minigames are the puzzle ones. Usually the puzzles are easy, so there isn't much to think about, but it is a nice break from the garbage that took place just before this, and that's probably why these puzzle ones were my favorite. So moving on, the third set of minigames are the trivia games about whoever you're trying to save. The questions range from way too obvious answers to episode-specific stuff to what? How was I supposed to know that? The trivia sections are fine, but they take too long, especially since you have to wait for time to stop in order to get to the next question. After the trivia, you basically do the same things as the first set of missions, but you do them with whoever you saved. There was a pretty funny one where Mr. Krabs squares off against some robots and you're doing the opposite of Epo and bobbing and weaving, so I don't hate these ones as much, but they're still whatever. After this, you do something with all the things you collected. Basically, you just put them all back in their rightful spots. There are some mild puzzle elements where you have to figure out where to put the things, but it isn't anything too deep to think about. And once you finish that, you get to do the just for fun minigames, as in you don't need to do anything special to progress the script. I actually threw in almost all of them so I could just be done with them. These were like the celebratory minigames to congratulate you on finishing the areas. You get things such as bowling, Simon Says, and whack-a-mole. Like almost every other minigame in Battle for Bikini Bottom, these are things I could find on some flash game site and get the same amount of enjoyment. Like, the bowling one isn't any better than Elf Bowling, and Simon Says is Simon Says. So all in all, just like in the other video with the Fairly Odd Parents and Wild Thornberry games, I'd rather just go to Newgrounds or something and play some flash games that I actually care about. Alright, so now we have Spongebob the Movie, and this game went from a good platformer game to another point-and-click game, which is funny because I really did think that Employee of the Month was the only one. And right off the bat, this game has a huge issue that sucks away my enjoyment and energy real quick. And that's the simple fact that you can't skip dialogue. I don't understand why this had to happen, considering that in Employee of the Month you could skip it. And this is especially annoying when I accidentally click on someone and they launch into some dialogue. There's seemingly a lot of dialogue compared to the other games and you can just feel it. This one took me the longest to actually play through because I would just check out mid-conversation and not be sure what to do, meaning I would have to listen to the whole dialogue again, though that might be some unchecked ADHD kicking in. Plus, there's a lot of dialogue choices which makes the talk with the old lady last way longer than it should. Beyond that, there was another thing that was bugging me about this game, and it's that SpongeBob is more of a dick in this game. Like, he's always done things that inconvenience other people, but usually he's just naive and innocent about it. But in this game, he seems fully aware of what he's doing and is perfectly okay with it. Plus, he's a lot more sassy with people, giving him an air of smugness, which is just annoying. Like, there was one time he barged into a room and was like, "Do you know your door's unlocked?" And when the lady says, "Usually people knock," SpongeBob just goes, "I never saw a reason to." I don't know, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Past that, if you saw the SpongeBob movie, which you should, it's truly a great movie, you already know what happens in this game. Up until the point where SpongeBob and Patrick get their paddy wagon back, the story beats are basically the same, minus some little things that are here because this is a point-and-click game after all, which means you're doing stuff such as stealing toothpaste from Squidward so you can brush your teeth and doing some extra things to steal the crown as Plankton. But when you get to the point after Mindy gives the duo the mustache of manliness, things start to change a bit. So first off, the path that SpongeBob needed to take is too dark, so he needs to light the way. First, he stops at a hotel where he has to solve the case of the missing pearls, which gives you an orb needed in the cave to light it up. Here you solve a couple of puzzles until you finally get to a place where you can place the orb and it will reflect the light in a way that shines a path for you. From there you keep walking until you stumble upon a chiropractor, which is pretty convenient because Patrick is aching, but Patrick can't be treated because he's an invertebrate, which is the source of a protest going on. So SpongeBob, out of the goodness of his heart, decides to mediate the situation, which turns out to be pretty easy. The most annoying part is having to walk through the maze over and over. And there is a thing you need, which is in a weird place. As in, I probably wouldn't have got it if I wasn't just moving my mouse around. Then Dennis the Menace catches up with you, but he gets stomped out of the game, and the Cyclops takes you to Shell City, where Patrick actually saves the day by finding some onions so he could cry on SpongeBob, who then has to crown the plug. They get out of there and now need to call up Hasselhoff, but I guess they couldn't get his actual likeness, so they bleep him out at every chance they get. You get back and things are pretty much the same at the end, other than the part where you had to set up the sound system. Well, I assume, because as soon as I finished the final part, the game crashed on me. But don't worry, I did look it up and it was basically the same. The game's dialogue is pretty snappy and feels right as far as the SpongeBob game goes, which is probably because they were taking from the wonderful movie, and I mean, that's pretty hard to screw up. In particular, I enjoyed how basically everyone was shitting on SpongeBob throughout the game. And that's really all there is to say about it. It's a game based on the movie, so there is a baseline to how good it could be. It's just hampered by the things I talked about earlier, especially the non-skippable dialogue. And finally, here we are at Lights, Camera, Pants, which has the biggest difference from the console version to the PC version. Lights, Camera, Pants is the one game out of all of these where I haven't played either version. The console version is a Mario Party type game where everyone competes against each other to try and get the spot as the villain in the new Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy special. After that, you get to watch the 30-minute special, which is honestly pretty impressive if you ask me. Now for the PC version, you get you guessed it, a point-and-click game. Not only is the gameplay different, but the story itself is tweaked as well. In this game, SpongeBob is initially the only one who wants to be in the special, which isn't enough. So SpongeBob is then tasked with recruiting people to be part of the special, and this is usually done by helping people with whatever problems they have. In addition, you have a couple of minigames as well, which are mostly meh and not too great. So it's like they mixed Employee of the Month and Battle for Bikini Bottom. Honestly, as I was going through the first section of this game, aka East Bikini Bottom, I thought this game was pretty bad. The puzzles weren't good at all, and there wasn't much going on. I figured I was just zooming through and the game would be chill, but mostly boring and short. But as I kept going past the initial area, I realized that East Bikini Bottom was basically the tutorial and the game really starts to open up. Lights, Camera, Pants is less linear than the other games since the goal in this one is more open-ended. All you have to do is get enough people to be in the special, it doesn't matter who it is. For this reason, the game is more centered on personal stories rather than the overarching plot. Patrick opens a lemonade stand and you gotta find money so you can be his first customer. Mr. Krabs is sick and the only way to cure him is with the golden spatula. Squidward is stuck in that one place where there are a bunch of other squids and he needs some energy so he can actually leave. It's fun to see all the different situations that the characters are in and how you can help them. And there are a lot of characters to recruit. I even like how they lampshade some of the puzzles. For example, at the boating school, Morty says that he left the combination to his locker outside, but you just walked past there and you didn't see anything. Lo and behold, when you go back outside, it's magically there. SpongeBob picks it up and says, "Strange, that wasn't here before." In addition, some of the puzzles are a little harder than in any of the other games. The one that sticks out in my mind was for a reporter where you have to find him a giant pearl, which is required if you want to finish some other people's quests. To get it, you have to go to prehistoric times and find a clam there, where you give it a pile of sand so it can sleep on. Then when you go back to modern times, you go to the clam and it turns out the clam is huge, giving you the pearl you need. There was no direct indication that the sand was for the clam, but the game is so open-ended that you can progress other character stories and come back to figure it out. When you get enough characters to fill all the roles, you can shoot the special, which is the end of the game basically. Of course, I wouldn't have recruited all the characters because it was pretty fun. For the special, it's extremely rewarding to get all the characters because the roles can be filled by different people. Man Ray could be an old lady, the Dirty Bubble could be a big old clam, and the main villain could be SpongeBob himself. Each person recorded each part they could, and it's so unique in the delivery they give that I wanted to watch the special over and over so I could see how everyone delivered their lines. Melvin the super nerd sounds like he's recording on a Turtle Beach headset and is scared to be there. The old lady and clam turn out to be great villains, but the real shining moment is at the end of the special where the main villain begs to not be put back. Each person gives an inspired performance. I mean, Larry the Lobster really sounded like he was going to be served with a side of melted butter. And as I said earlier, once you've had your fun with the special, the game is over. I really love this game and I honestly wished I played this as a kid. Of course, there were some issues though. I got lost a couple times because it wasn't clear where you're going, like in Sandy's Tree Dome. Also, the ending was lackluster, and if there is a true ending, I didn't get it because I didn't find all the props. I'm not sure how to find them, and GameFAQs doesn't even know, so if you do know, please hit me up. And of course, I really didn't need to have the minigames. All of them were just some standard shoot something at something or whatever other types I'm forgetting. The checkers one was cool, but checkers is checkers. Oh, and I forgot to mention that there are these little 2D picture slideshows that occasionally pop up and are odd enough to actually make me laugh. It's like something I would see while browsing my phone at like 3 in the morning. At the end of the day, all these games are enjoyable, maybe Battle for Bikini Bottom a little less. All the point and click games seem to use the same engine and even some voice clips are reused, so you could play them out of order and they won't feel dated in comparison to each other. If I had to give a ranking, it would be Lights Camera Pants at the top, then Employee of the Month, followed by the movie game, and finally Battle for Bikini Bottom. If you want me to play the rest of the SpongeBob PC games, let me know in the comments, or maybe I'll just end up doing it regardless. Only time can tell. Also, let me know what your favorite SpongeBob game is. Mine is probably Creature from the Krusty Krab. And finally, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to stay notified as we upload every week. But before you do all that and treat yourself to a large helping of triple gooberry surprise, have a good day.